So if I have this, which I do, this is my car. This is my garage, my seamless, perfect garage. Let's get out of here. I'm going to go here where my brush is. I think that's where it is. And I'm going to go to my color replacement tool. I've got it on color. They've got these other overlays. Now, again, you're seeing that these overlays in your layers palette are all over Photoshop, correct? So you want to keep this on color for this, okay? And then usually keep it here, the first one, which is contiguous, and this is uncontiguous. It also has fined edges. Sometimes I use that. And then I'm just going to pick another color. I don't want to do that. Let's do this one. And literally, it's just going to be a matter of painting it. So when I come in here, and it'll find a lot of the edges where it won't go over. And I'm just going to go in and just paint the whole car out. See, I went over a little bit. Now, you got a little crosshairs in there. You see that right there? I want to keep that in the area that I'm painting. I don't want to go up in here because then it thinks I'm painting there. Does that make sense? So it can go over a little bit as long as the crosshairs is staying on my color part. And all I got to do is just go paint it, and it's going to switch the color. Make sense?
Yeah, so it holds on to the value.
Yeah, it holds on everything underneath, which is really nice. Okay. It's really nice too when you got a painting in some little area, you go, I want to make that whatever. And you can just go in and kick it into another color. It's nice, right? And I think I'm going to show you another thing with the gradient tool later. I want to hopefully circle back to the gradient tool. I'll just talk about the basics of it today. There's so much shit you can do with that thing. Okay. Like I used to have a real big problem because I didn't know it. Sometimes when you had to change something like a photo, change something to white was a real pain in the ass. The gradient mesh tool does it like that. Okay. Okay, does this make sense? You just paint it, right?
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I want to talk about here, and then I'll go to gradient mesh. Is there any questions on that? That's simple, right? You'll notice if you put it on like luminosity or something, it'll start doing really weird stuff. Now, what you got to remember is all these tools are in context, okay? So like a lot of these tools I've looked at, especially when I first started using this stuff, and I go, well, that's stupid. Look what it does. And it's like, no, it's not stupid, because when you're doing this thing that you're not doing right now, that actually works great. Does that make sense? So that's why all those things are in there that sometimes you go, this doesn't do anything, or all this does is darken everything. And you go, right, but there's situations where that works better. Does that make sense? Now, you can literally almost every tool in Photoshop, I could probably spend 2 weeks on, okay? Where go, oh, by the way, there's this sub menu. And by the way, you can go into this sub menu, you can do raking light from this. And by the way, you can go down here and do this. And I mean, everything in Photoshop is an endless rabbit hole, okay? Which is kind of weird. It's really cool. I actually think that's really cool. So I've been using it forever and I feel like I don't know shit about it. You know what I mean? Because there's huge amounts of stuff. It just depends on what your focus is on it, okay? My focus has mostly been on probably painting, I guess, and drawing and stuff like that. Other people who do like that Vogue, the people who do really high-end photo touching or whatever you call it, retouching. They got a whole different set of tools they use, okay? Every time I look at those people, I'm like, wow, I didn't even know about that. And they just have these great ways of doing these things that are just so perfect. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go. I'm going to open a photo. I had some photos in here. Wait a minute. Oh, here it is. I'm going to take this one. This birdie, we went hiking yesterday. Look how happy she is. Okay. So I'm going to go here up to window because that's where all our palettes live. And I'm going to go to actions. And I'm going to go right here because here's the default actions. Okay. I don't care about that. I'm going to create a new folder. So now I got a folder. Okay. Now I'm going to go start. I'm going to hit this little, it's just like your layers palette, if you notice, right? So I'm going to go plus, I'm going to create a new action. I'm going to call it Birdie Ah. And I'm going to put it in the set, the birdie factor. And I'm going to hit record. And now I'm going to go just do a bunch of silly things to this. Maybe I'll go here first and I'll saturate it too much. Or maybe I'll desaturate it. And then I'll go on another layer and I'll go maybe find something that's sort of sepia-ish. And start to try and knock it into a sepia-ish photo. You know, and I could come in here and put some texture on it, make it look old, but I won't. And then maybe come up here and give it a little bit of a lens. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Filter, lens correction, custom, and give it a little vignette. And maybe go. All right, so let's say that's what I like, okay? I'm gonna come here and hit stop. And now I've got this action in here. So I'm gonna go to another picture. Where'd it go? And go into Birdie Factor and hit play. And it applies that action to everything. Okay. Now, why would I use this? There's a bunch of reasons. One, I might use, let's say I'm doing a magazine layout and this is going to be my look. All the photography I want to take, I want to make it look sepia tone, old, like, you know, it's an article about a ghost town in Bodie, Utah, or wherever that is, Montana. So I want everything to look like that. And it's just going to take it. And I just go bing, boom, bing, boom, bing, boom. And everything's got the exact same treatment. Does that make sense? Now, another thing you'll see is people sell actions. I don't know if you've seen that. I saved one. I'll find it this week. I saved one because I buy assets from a video company once in a while. So they send me it's really cool actually. And like every once in a while they send me an email and they go, here's a bunch of free stuff. And a lot of it's really good stuff. And one of them was an action, which I've never bought. I'm probably never going to buy an action, but I go, oh, I'll save that for class. And what you'll buy a lot is somebody will create an action around, I'm going to take a photograph and turn it into a pencil drawing. Does that make sense? Or I'm going to take a photo and I'm going to make it look like an oil painting, right? So you just buy this action, you go click and boom, it looks like an oil painting. Well, you could do the same thing. Okay.
So it's kind of like an Instagram filter.
Yeah, in a much more complex way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, I can make this look like anything. I mean, you know, there's people that, you know, again, this is like one of those interesting things where if I go on YouTube and I go oil painting tech, whatever in Photoshop, and they'll go, okay, you go to here, and it's really weird. They'll figure out like these weird ways of doing it, but you know, sometimes it looks pretty good, right? I go, oh, I go in here and I blur it a little bit, and then I do a motion blur on just a hair, and then I go into this filter and I do this. I go in this sub menu and I put 14, 22, 38 here. And by the time you get done with it, you have no idea what any of that was. But at the end, the result is the thing you're looking for, right? Well, if you have process like that, you can just turn it into an action. So you don't have to go through it all the time. You know what I mean? Like maybe you have a way with your drawings or something where you go, I like to do this before I start the painting process. I like it to look like this underneath, you know, maybe you're adding another idea, a texture thing over it, and you just do it as an action. So you go bing, you hit it, and you go boom, and you do this to it. And now you're ready to start painting, and that eliminates that whole process. Does that make sense? It's really handy, okay? Now, also remember, like, you know, if they're different size photos and things like that, that's probably going to change the equation. If it's something like this, it might just because of the vignette. Let's see what happens if we do it on something else. Let's find what I like about this is it's just pretty simple. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So this tool And we're going to, okay, so this tool lives here. I think it's here. Or adjustments, gradient map right there, but we're not going to use it there because I can go into layers and it's in my adjustment layers right there. Okay, so what it just did, it just applied this color because that's probably the last thing I did. But I'm going to click this and I'm going to get this window. Okay. And I'm going to switch. Okay, so what this is doing is this is just like, let's go back here for a second. It's just like this. So here's your levels. You got your dark over here, your mids and your lights, and here's your scale. Does that make sense? So we're using the same thing, right? So we're going to go here, back to here. God, I said a total brain fade. Okay. So it's doing this. So what this is doing is anywhere I put a color on here, it's going to map it to that value. Does that make sense? So let's change this. So now I click that, I get this. So in the light areas, let's try. Actually, maybe I'll keep it like that for now. I'm going to push it a little redder. I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to go over here to the darks. Now they got a red in here. I don't want a red. I want maybe a bluer. Okay, so what it's doing now is it's mapping now to those darker values. Does that make sense? It's actually a fairly simple thing. Now, what you got to be careful of, okay, so I know this is probably obvious, but if I move over this way, I'm going to go grayer and lighter. Over here, I'm going to get more saturated. This way darker and that way lighter. Okay, just kind of keep that in mind. So I'm going to try going a little bluer. And I want it a little, yeah, more like that. Then I'm going to come back here and see if I can, this needs to go a little lighter or maybe even more ominous looking. Now, here's something that you got to keep in mind here. If I start going, I'm going to introduce, let's say another color or something, right? So let's introduce another color. It's just some weird color. So I'm going to hold Option and drag this over. By the way, you have this, and that's going to soften. You can adjust the transition between the values, the colors. Does that make sense? Soften them, that kind of thing. So I can come in here, and if I want to get a little more blown out effect, I could probably do that. I'm going to move it over here a little bit. And now we have this next color. So let's just push in a little more. Let's push it up towards a purplish area. Now, sometimes I'll go, well, okay, that's too much, obviously. So I'm going to come in here again. And I'm going to try and lighten it up a little. Because what you got to start doing is you got to go, okay, it's going to pick all the values that you placed it in the scale, okay? So sometimes you'll place something in there and all of a sudden the colors they'll just not transition well or something. It could be because you're going, hey, it could be because you're mapping a very light value onto a dark object and it's just going to blow it out. It could be that you're going such an abrupt change. Now, some of that you might be able to fix by rolling this away and getting it to smoothen out a little bit. But what you might be doing is it's such a major color transition that it just looks weird. Okay, so then you might go, well, that's actually, I need to map that maybe on the left, and it's doing it already over here. It's getting a little bit of warmth in here, like it's picking some of that up. But if I want to add some of that in there, I've got to sort of roll it in there, not just go boom and put a bunch of orange on it, and then it's just going to have a hard edge that's going to look weird. Does that make sense? So let's see. I love playing with this. I'm still not happy with that. I think actually that's better. You know, and I could come in here and I could just add endless. I mean, you could really get pretty crazy with this thing. Warm that up in the foreground a little bit. And then I could use this as a starting point and start going, okay, now I'm going to come in here. Oops. That's an ugly brush. Hang on. Find a lighter value. You know, and I could start lighting up some windows in here. I could put some torches or something down here and start some fire, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I could just start going, right? What I like this for, does that all make sense? It's pretty simple, okay? You're just mapping. You really got to play with this, and playing with this thing to me is super fun. So what I was going to say is that grayscale thing in my sketchbook, I do this a lot because I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I'll just scan it real quick and then I'll pull it in here and just play around and go, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I'll just keep it on my 5 phone and go, okay, I'm doing that as a color comp. Does that make sense? And it also, what I love about it is I can come in here with no idea what I'm going to do color wise, which you're going to find very handy if you go into like Phil's environment class or something like that. Okay. Or probably some of Franz's classes, I would guess. Like I like it for this kind of stuff. What I think is really cool. I like it for a lot of stuff, but I love these. These are nice little studies. I don't know who they are. I'm going to go back. Now, I probably would take these apart. I wouldn't want them all in the same thing because I can tell right now this one down here will probably be a problem. And let's just go to a blue, let's say. Just see what that does. I'm going to come over here. What I'm trying to do is just separate it right off the bat. Actually, I'm going backwards. Hang on. I want to put a warm over here. Oops. So let's get a light value out here. And let's get a little more color in it. And I'm going to come over here and cool it out. There we go. So then I'm starting to go, okay. But I want to keep some information in those shadows. I don't want it to get too blown out. So that's finding. Let's see if I go over here a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now it's starting to give me the darks in the darks, but I'm keeping some information in there. Does that make sense? And it's kind of hazy, which I like. But I'm going to warm this up a little more. Yeah. And just like I said, this one right here, it's weird with this color scheme. These ones works okay. Does that make sense? Now, another thing you could do, once I get it to here, is I might come in here and get maybe change my brush to, it's on color dodge. Let's try that. I probably need a soft brush for this, I guess. It's too much. And I could come in here and I could start burning. It's weird that it's not diffusing. Hang on. My brush isn't diffusing for some reason. But I could blow out some of these areas so they're getting a little more light catching right there because the light source is up here. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what that dot, well, okay, so this is the overlays, basically the same ones you have in your, mostly, same ones you have in your layers palette, but I'm applying it to the brush because I don't want it to apply to the whole layer, right? I want to paint it. And what like the color dodge does is does the same thing as a dodge tool. It lightens it up, but with whatever color's in the foreground. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
I can come in here and put in, like, really blast out this lighting right here and maybe here, you know, and add in some stuff in there. I don't know why it's getting such a hard edge right there, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. You know, and I could blow it out if I want. That's better. And here. And here. But like you can see right here, if I've got a light source up here, just right here, I can have the light spill there. Does that make sense? And I can also do little things like sort of lens flare-y things and stuff like that. So I'm going to put a little in here, out here, maybe a little in there, and just let it spill into this foreground area or this center area, just so it give a little more dramatic lighting, right? And then I just keep going, right? Now I could dial in, I could add in more gradient points in there, and I could make a fairly complex thing. I can go, well, maybe I need to neutralize the blue a little bit, whatever, you know, whatever. But if I'm going to play with it, I got to double click this right here. And then here's my map. You know, do I want to go a little darker? What happens if this goes lighter? This will probably be really weird. Yeah. So you see what happens. This is the biggest mistake I see people make, is they start mapping weird dark values or light values to a very dark object and things like that, and it starts looking really weird. Does that make sense? Yeah, like this light thing. Like if I come over here, this is the darks, right? So if I come in here and I do that, well, that, you know what I mean? It's going to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
So just be cognizant of what you're picking. What were you going to say, Casey?
Oh, that looks like a photo negative right now.
Exactly. Now, if I wanted that, cool. You know what I mean? I don't. And, you know, and then I might come in here, like I said, and go, well, this blue feels like maybe it needs to be a little desaturated. So I can move it this way. So you can get a little lighter, maybe just down a little bit, dial it in. Feels a little better there to me. By the way, use it from your layer, your adjustment layers, okay? It exists up in your adjustments in edit. I think it's edit. It exists there, but you don't want to, you know, you want to put it on another layer so you're working non-destructively and you can get rid of it. Yeah. And by the way, hopefully you guys are using all those tools in there all the time. If you're doing levels, you know, the ones that are in there, your standard tools, right? Be accessing those from your adjustments layer. Get used to working smart. Okay. Okay, guys, I'll see you in the morning.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put this stuff up right now. All right, you guys.